Hey guys, Sam from Everything PSP here. Today we're going to be taking a look at Star Wars The Force Unleashed for the PSP. This is the first video in an 8-part series where I'm going to be looking at all the Star Wars games for the PSP and then ranking them. So while we get loaded into a new game and fast forward the opening credits, I just wanted to give you guys a quick overview of the storyline for those who aren't familiar with The Force Unleashed. The project bridges the first two Star Wars trilogies, acting as an origin story for both the Rebel Alliance and the Galactic Civil War. The game introduces a new protagonist named Starkiller. After he is tasked with planting the seeds of what would become the Rebel Alliance, which Vader plans to take advantage of to overthrow the Emperor, Starkiller begins to question his own morality and to slowly redeem himself. Following Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm, the game became part of the non-canon Star Wars expanded universe known as Star Wars Legends.
Report.
Yes, sir. We're suffering heavy resistance, sir. So far, we haven't even broken their front line.
Leave that to me.
While I'm not going to spend too much time getting bogged down in the version differences, due to the technical limitations of the PSP, this version is actually ported from the Wii version and is the same as the PS2 version as well. So the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions were actually made with a different engine called Ronin, which had high-def graphics and advanced dynamic destruction effects, whereas this version takes a more tame approach and instead does what it can with the hardware available to emulate some of those effects. The PSP version of this game also has exclusive features, but as you'll see as we continue through this video, these limitations have some funny effects, particularly around the cutscenes where the low-resolution models will pose awkwardly.
How many pilots have you lost before me?
7.
Excellent.
Which I actually think is quite funny, and if anything adds to the charm of this version of the game, especially during the close-ups of their expressionless faces.
Get us closer.
I find that it gives the acting a sort of deadpan quality that makes it feel like really bad B cinema or fan movie, and it just adds to the overall feel.
Opposition towards us. Explosive charges on levels 2, 5, and 12, just like we planned.
Yes, sir.
So this game is basically a Star Wars power fantasy. Right from the beginning you have very powerful abilities and moves, and the game really does encourage you to use them at every moment. A lot of Starkiller's methods of dispatching the bad guys are a little bit overkill to say the least. Here you can see him forcing someone out of the shields into deep space, and the environment often changes around you quite a lot. You can see this TIE fighter flying into the hangar. So as you can see here, we're being introduced to one of the main mechanics of the game, where you'll be introduced to a room of enemies with a large health bar down the bottom, and basically you have to dispatch of everyone in the room, and then a door will open allowing you to progress. This does get a little bit rinse and repeat after a while, but it is a pretty good formula, and seeing as the point of the game is to just destroy everything in your path, I never really found it to be an issue, especially with the changing environments and the additional abilities that you unlock, as well as the varying difficulties of the enemies as you continue through the game. You can use the Force in various ways by picking up enemies and throwing them into the wall or into another enemy, as well as interact with the environment in certain specific locations. This is quite common when you come to a door as a barrier between another area, and I think it might actually be a way to hide the loading screen from the player. So I thought this was kind of an odd choice for a platforming section, where you have to throw the wings of a TIE fighter into the sides of the building. If he's got that much power, I don't see why he couldn't just force jump all the way up there. This is also where I started to notice the limitations of the camera in the PSP version. Obviously lacking a second joystick, you don't have as much freedom of movement around the character, and you do have to wait for quite a long time before the camera swings around behind Starkiller again. And during the combat, the camera is a bit more responsive, but during the slower sections, and especially with the platforming, it can be really difficult to be orientated in the right position. And it seems to slow the gameplay down quite a lot. So you can see here we've collected a color crystal for the lightsaber. Now this is purely cosmetic and doesn't have any effect on the gameplay, but I do like it as an additional customization option. There are also combat crystals available later in the game, which actually enhance your abilities and give you certain buffs to your character. So now we're just going to continue down the corridor here to another one of these force doors, and once we've opened that, we're going to be faced with another group of militia troops, which we'll have to dispatch to access the next area. I thought this was a pretty funny shot where I threw the barrel at the guy from all the way across the hangar and knocked him square in the face. And I think that's where you can really have the most fun with this game, coming up with different interesting ways to get rid of your enemies. Now we have another Oscar-worthy cutscene where Starkiller is going to pull this modified LAAT gunship into the hangar using the Force alone. Now I've got no idea about the context of how much power he actually has or how much power it would take to do this, but it seems that a lot of the stuff he does is overkill, and if he's got this much power, he's really just toying with his enemies. And I mean, case in point, that guy was just running away, minding his own business, and he gets smacked in the back of the head with a box.
Where is the Jedi? Ah! Tell me.
Why? I'm dead anyway. Ah! Okay, please, just stop.
Then talk.
Master, go to control room.
So I don't really know why that was such a big exposition. I think the first place you would look for a general would be the bridge of the ship, and I think this clip here is a strong contender for my favourite scene so far, where the guy just explodes on impact for absolutely no reason. Now, I wanted to do something a bit different here and just show you behind the scenes of how long it actually takes to get through these sections. When I'm making a video like this, obviously I cut down a lot of the filler, but this is just to give you an idea of how long it realistically takes to get through each section of the game, and there's actually a lot more gameplay here that I can't show due to time constraints. Now we've arrived at the mini-boss for this level, which is an ATST, but of course, in true Force Unleashed fashion, we have a rebel trooper dispatching of the stormtrooper and throwing him into a suspiciously familiar looking box. I wonder if that's the same box from earlier and if we'll be seeing more of this mysterious box character. So it's probably a good time to address the mechanics when you get to a boss battle. It's very similar to clearing the room as we did with the militia troopers before, but this time there are periods during the battle where the enemy is invulnerable to your attacks and you have to whittle them down or use the environment or complete a quick time event to actually really get any damage done. With that being said, Starkiller does make up for it in fashion with his cutscenes, which are way over the top, and again makes me wonder whether he's just toying with his enemies this whole time. I mean, not only does he climb up and shoot force lightning directly into the cockpit, but he also follows it up with a quick lightsaber lobotomy just to make sure that he's finished the job. And then on top of that, just to put the icing on the cake, he also crushes the ATST into oblivion, leaving me wondering why he didn't do that immediately when he walked in the room. With all that unnecessary carnage out of the way, it's time to go through another force door and obliterate another corridor of enemies. I'm sure you're starting to see the pattern by this point, but bear with me, as once we get to the big boss battle, the lightsaber combat in this game is actually pretty fun. Okay, so we're finally coming up to the big bad. Now, one of the interesting things that I found about Master Ram Kota is that he seems to be more concerned about whether or not Vader sent a boy to defeat him.
Months of attacking Imperial targets and Vader sends a boy to fight me?
He's so worked up in his own ego that he doesn't identify Starkiller as a threat, which ultimately is going to be his downfall. So you can see, as I mentioned before, a lot of the time the enemies are going to be blocking, so you really have to wait for that opportunity to strike. There's also a lot of quick time events peppered into the battles, and you really want to try and nail them when they come up because they are what are going to take the most HP off the enemies. These battles go on for quite some time, so I've just cut the middle section of the battle out so you don't have to sit through it and watch the whole thing. Just wanted to mention, in case you've noticed, that the sound in this video does clip a little bit, and that's just an artifact of the way that it was recorded. When you play this game yourself, you won't notice that sound clipping. Now I don't really want to talk over this cutscene, but there's a couple of things that I find really interesting. First of all, Rancoder's lightsaber goes through his face and back out again due to the poor positioning of the models. And also, during the reading of the script, it seems like whoever's voicing Rancoder, where he says, "Me?" I feel like it would have been more fitting for Starkiller to say that.
I sense only me?
Also, I can't pass up an opportunity to use the word defenestration. So now we get to take a look inside the Rogue Shadow, which is Starkiller's ship. From here you can do a few things, such as customizing your lightsaber, where you can change the color, as well as the combat crystal, which will give you a buff, and the look of the saber by changing the hilt. You can also change your outfit. The most useful section here is the Force powers, where you can use the points that you've earned by defeating enemies during the game to upgrade your existing moves, or to put them towards new moves to give you more options when you're defeating hordes of enemies. Also, another cool feature for fans of this game is the Jedi holocrons, which you collect throughout the levels, which can then be viewed in the menu here, giving you a peek behind the scenes at some of the concept art that was drawn during the development of this game. That's really all I have to say about The Force Unleashed. For the rest of this video, I'm just going to show you guys the rest of my gameplay highlights, and then at the end we're going to go through the rankings, and then I'll show you the little mashup I made of all my favourite bits from the cutscenes.
Let's take this guy out.
1,000 Jedi died cursing Darth Desolus.
Spies have located another Jedi. I do not expect you to survive. If you destroy him, you'll be one step closer to your destiny.
The Emperor.
Yes. Only together can we defeat him.
I will not fail you, Master.
Amazing. It looks just like the Jedi Temple on Coruscant.
Proxy, are you picking up any communications?
Too many to decipher. I can hear thousands of droids, all calling out to each other. This is where all droids go to die.
Speak.
Drexel, Grino Kruta Kada. Hola.
We'll see.
So now that we've had a good look at the game, it's time for us to give it some ratings. Personally, I would give the graphics a 3 out of 5, the gameplay a 4 out of 5, and the story a 5 out of 5. While the cutscenes are quite hilarious in the way that they're rendered, I find that adds to the charm of the game, and the moves are pretty cool, but the graphics do hold it back. Now let's have a look at some of my favourite clips.
I do not expect you to survive.
How many pilots have you lost before me?
7.
Excellent.
Leave no witnesses.
And Vader won't always be your master. I sense only me?
Drexel, Grino Kruta. Hola.
We'll see.
My spies have located located another Jedi.
I will not fail you, Master.
Think, boy. I have survived much worse than this. Do you really think you can defeat me?
This is where all droids go to die.
And that about wraps it up for today. I hope you enjoy what I've put together here for part 1, and I'm really looking forward to coming back to continue this series. If you want to see more stuff like this, please let me know in the comments below. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit the subscribe button to be notified when the next video comes out. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on Everything PSP.